Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about 3 big, huge health anxiety must-knows. So if you're suffering from health anxiety, hypochondria, please rewatch this video over again. Take notes, ingrain this information so that you can move past this anxiety and live a better life. And go check out the Anxiety Project podcast. It's available anywhere you listen to podcasts. And on the show, I talk about all areas of anxiety and how to overcome the structure the structure you need to adopt in order to overcome anxiety and to live the most meaningful life you can live. It's a self-growth podcast, so every episode is a different topic related to self-development. And so today, the first huge health anxiety must know is that when you're obsessing over a certain ailment, because health anxiety sufferers obsess religiously over a particular body pain, body zap, heart palpitation, dizziness, and they become so reactive to these sensations and they obsess over it continuously. And so that's a sign that you're trying to solve the problem. But so many health anxiety sufferers fail to solve the right problem, right? They're trying to traverse this swamp of the unknown that is their health anxiety, but they fail to tackle the root of their health anxiety. So they do things like coping mechanisms to help alleviate that pain and to repress that discomfort that they're experiencing. They do things like maybe drink alcohol or take medications or rely on loved ones for reassurance, rely on their doctor. They phone their doctor all the time, talking to them, wondering what's going on, or they go on Dr. Google or the YouTube doctors and they religiously and obsess over the information, but they fail to tackle the root. And for me, I was not focusing on what I could do to lessen my health anxiety. I was focusing on the symptom and what I could do. I have kidney disease and putting a label on it, right? Because we want to put labels on it because if we're traversing the unknown, there's too much potential, right? We want to pin whatever this is, whatever's happening, right? So I would put labels on my symptoms, but they were never the real cause, right? And that's what I did was the root was calming down my parasympathetic nervous system, which was my stress system. I was revved up continuously. I had so many poor beliefs and values within me that I needed to break apart and rebuild. My identity was of an unhealthy person. I looked in the mirror and I saw someone who was not healthy, weak-minded, and so I had to rebuild on this identity, and I will talk about this later in the video, so please stick around because that is huge, okay? So the question is, how better could your life become if you decide to put yourself together? Because clearly health anxiety is a sign that there is unresolved emotion, there is stacked emotion that needs to be let go of. There are parts of you that need to be let go of so that you can reintegrate and build upon this new identity. And so the second huge health anxiety must know is that people with health anxiety, they unconsciously shrink their world down smaller and smaller until they avoid everything that makes them uncomfortable. So for example, they're out in public, they're out somewhere where there's other people and all of a sudden they encounter this snake of their mortality, right? What happens? Like, why do health anxiety sufferers obsess so much? Is that, when you put a snake in a chimpanzee enclosure, the chimpanzees hit the trees and they stare at that snake obsessively. until the snake leaves, right? They'll do that for days. And the reason why they do that is because an anomaly has appeared in the midst of their walled off territory. So like the Garden of Eden, the snake always gets in the garden. Like in the Buddha story, no matter how blind you make Buddha, he will encounter death, decay, and suffering. That is a part of life. The snakes will get in. And so that's why when health anxiety suffers, they shrink their world down to the point where they can't even leave their home. They think that's their safe zone, but what happens when they experience the sensation in their home, or the feelings of anxiety in their home, or the memories of traumatic events in their home? That's the snake getting in. They're no longer safe even in their own home. And then it's easy to fall into hopelessness at that point. But let's look at avoidance more deeply. What are the two big anxiety fears here? One is social judgment. Being out in public and, acting crazy, losing control, throwing up, fainting, having a heart attack in front of other people, right? That's embarrassing. They don't want to feel judged. Why? Well, I feel like it is biologically encoded in us to be socially accepted because we are in fact social creatures. We belong in a community. If we were outcasted, if we were pulled away from our community and we were left alone back then, well, what would happen? Well, death. Well, how are we going to survive on our own? There's just too much to do, and two brains are way better than one. Because that's why when you talk to people, you just feel, it's so different when you talk about problems. It's like when you say it out loud to someone, not only do they give their words of wisdom, but you can also recognize that it's not as big as a problem as it may seem when you project it outwards and shine a light on it, right? But anyways, going back to the fear of being judged, that is one of the big fears. That's why a lot of anxiety sufferers don't go out too much in public. They kind of retreat slowly back into their home. And then it's also the fear of encountering the snake of their mortality, losing control and dying while being judged, right? All of those combined prevent an anxiety sufferer from really being their empowered self. That's how you overcome anxiety, is through systematic desensitization, slowly pushing yourself into what is uncomfortable and showing yourself that you could actually survive in this particular situation because the brain works by association. If you associate a particular environment as being threatening to you in any way, then any other environment related to that environment that you ran away from will be associated with the fear. And then this snowballs exponentially. It's like it's a very steep decline. It's a spiral that can get out of control rapidly, and the dragon grows. And now, after weeks, like me, when I used to suffer from agoraphobia, right? That's what that is being fearful of fear itself. That's what happened to me. I didn't want to go outside and confront the dragon because the dragon at that point was so big. And we see the fear of fear itself in Harry Potter. It's so brilliant, J.K. Rowling. I just keep unraveling the brilliance of this story in my mind consistently. Harry, in year 3, he encounters the Dementor on the train. Right? And the Dementor represents fear itself. And Professor Lupin, he says to Harry, yeah, that's what you fear, Harry. You fear fear itself. And the Dementor has this aura of ice around it. So whenever it's close, it freezes you, right? That makes sense because whatever anomaly takes place, like for a health anxiety sufferer, the feelings of losing control in a public place, that is the freeze response immediately, right? And then what happens? Freeze, retreat. But also, I had to really look at this story and ask the question, why does Harry, when he confronts fear, he also confronts the pains of his past? So he relives traumas of his past. And I thought about this for a long time and I couldn't figure it out. And then I thought, well, it makes sense, because when we are in fear, all of our inadequacies bubble up to the surface. Unresolved emotion, unresolved trauma, our competence and the judgments of ourselves come up to the surface. Because here's the thing, when faced with the unknown, our beliefs of dealing with that unknown are in proportion to our competence in dealing with that unknown in the past. So if we've stacked up much reassurance, dependency habits, we avoided so many places before, we've stacked up these habits, right? And so when we encounter the unknown, all of this evidence that indicates that we are unable to deal with traversing this swamp is because of all of these reasons, right? Like, I lived a history of avoidance, so when I would encounter that dragon, it's like the evidence of me dealing with that unknown is non-existent. And that's huge. And Jordan Peterson says something really profound. He says, do not practice what you do not want to become. And this brings me into the last eye-opening health anxiety realization, is that recovery requires a shift in your identity, your current framework. Now, why this must be is because health anxiety sufferers have a vision or a model of themselves in their mind as being a certain way. So if you're like my old self, who had a very static mindset and had beliefs like, I'll never change, I am unhealthy, I am dumb, I cannot learn, I cannot grow, I cannot be successful, I cannot live like this person, my brain is damaged, so I can't change in any way. If you're like that, then, well, there is a way to shift this identity, because that is a well-practiced identity. What if you entertained a different identity? What makes up identity? Beliefs plus values equals your identity. So beliefs and values. What do you believe about yourself? What do you value? I would say look to what you do every day, and that determines what you value. Every action you take is an internal vote of the person you want to become. And that's a quote from James Clear. He wrote a brilliant book called Atomic Habits that I highly recommend. In the book, he says, look to your micro routines. What you practice on a day-to-day basis builds on your identity. What are the values of a healthy person? Look at that pattern that the healthy person lays forward in their own life. What do they do each and every morning? What do they practice? Who do they listen to? What do they read? And so forth. So look towards the habits that make up someone who is empowered, and put that into your own routine. Build that into your identity. And for me, I had to shave off 95% of me, my identity, my ego, who I thought I was. I thought I was this, and I practiced all of these things, and turns out everything I was practicing was only making things worse for me, making my anxiety worse, making my beliefs and thoughts worse. So I had to shave that away and build on a new identity, right? And you do that through action. You don't want to wake up at 7 in the morning? Of course you don't. But a healthy person wakes up early. So for me, I had to set the bar just the right amount. So I used to wake up around 10 in the morning. Then I started to wake up at 9. That was my goal. So after a while, waking up at 9, I shaved it down to 8:30. And then after a while, like I'd say a week or two, I shaved it down to 8. And then it got down to 7 in about a month, right? So I gradually set the bar low enough so I can get there. I can reach that win. I could progress. But if you shift and adjust the nose of an airplane 3 degrees off of its current flight plan, right? That's not a lot. Right? You think, oh, the plane will still get to its destination. If it's going to Florida, it's still probably going to wind up in the same domain. But no, that's not the case. It'll actually wind up in Washington, D.C. Now, James Clear beautifully lays this out in Atomic Habits. He says that, the change that we implement now, so the habits that you do that make up a healthy person, you can't see the real outcome now. You can't see the difference now, but over the span of a year, if you continue to make those 1% wins, you're going to be in a totally different place than you were a year ago or where you are right now. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's video. Thank you everybody for being here with me today. Rise above anxiety. Make sure you check out the Anxiety Project program, my downloadable CBT and NLP-based program that will help you end anxiety naturally. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and that bell so that whenever a new video of mine appears, you will be one of the first to know. Namaste.